Ever since this channel started in the summer of 2015, the full series reviews have been a staple. I've been doing them pretty consistently ever since. This will be my 85th full series review, and it will also be the final one. This is something I've been building up to for months. If you still don't know what's going on, I don't know what to tell you. But enough about that, because today we are here to discuss Kaguya-sama, Love Is... In the name of God! In the name of God! In the name of God, we come to hell! In the name of God! In the name of God! In the name of God, we come to hell! Kaguya-sama Love is War is a romantic comedy series written and illustrated by Aka Akazaka, and it was serialized between 2015 and 2016 in Miracle Jump, but its sheer girth could not be contained by that lowly magazine, so it then transferred over to Weekly Young Jump, where it ran from 2016 to 2022. This story follows Kaguya Shinomiya, the daughter of a very wealthy CEO. She attends the very prestigious Shuchin Academy, one of the top high schools in all of Japan, and she serves as the vice president of the student council under the president Miyuki Shirogane. Shirogane comes from a very different background than Kaguya and most people who attend Shuchin, in that he's a commoner. He's a poor. He's a bum. While almost every student in this school comes from a position of privilege, which is one of the main reasons they were even able to attend this school, Shirogane's determination and hard work is what got him to this position. Ever since the formation of this new student council, Shirogane and Shinomiya have become quite the dynamic duo, and along with their treasurer, Yui Shigami, their secretary, Chika Fujiwara, and eventually their auditor, Miko Ino, they lead Shuchin into a prosperous era of productivity and innovation. But none of this matters, because Miyuki and Kaguya want to get into each other's pants very, very badly. Yes, they are quite smitten for each other, and have been for a while, and most people know it. But due to their upbringings, they have too much pride to admit it, that they have fallen for the other. In the game of love, they say, the first person to confess to the other is the loser. And these two ain't losers. So thus begins an intricate battle of the minds between these two geniuses, as they attempt to force the other to confess their love. They go about this in multiple ways, always coming up with these complicated plans, planning out certain scenarios far in advance. These kids get up to some psychotic shit, let me tell you. And that's where a lot of this story is focused on, at least early on. A lot of the early manga is particularly focused on the comedy aspect of this series, creating these scenarios, these battles, if you will, between Shirogane and Shinomiya, trying to get the other to confess. Sometimes it's just the two of them and their inner monologues. Sometimes they bring their friends into the mix to shake things up, try to put pressure on the other. And sometimes things happen that the two of them don't plan for. And that makes for some interesting stuff, let me tell you. All of this would be for naught if the series was not funny, and let me tell you, oh boy, not only is the series one of the funniest things I've ever read, but I think it's the only manga, at least in a long while, that has made me audibly laugh out loud on several occasions. I think Akazaka is a master of comedy. Honestly, I think the setups for these jokes in these chapters, they always introduce this new theme, whether it's a new game the characters are playing, whether it's a topic of discussion. He sort of lets the scenario play out, let it simmer, and then whacks you across the head with a fantastic punchline. It's a winning formula that really never fails in this series. And it's because Akazaka put a lot of time and care into this series, and just giving him so much to work with. The overall premise of the series is just ridiculous in general. I mean, high school love confessions are super trivial, well, looking back at things, but it can be a very big deal for people, at that point in their life. And the series often over-exaggerates that to an extreme degree, while being self-aware enough to be able to be like, yeah, we know these characters are crazy, isn't it wonderful? And it is. The series also takes the time to get pretty meta at certain points, often commenting on, itself or, the the state of manga and just, different tropes and rom-com cliches, and it sort of does this in a clever way to sort of subvert your expectations, oftentimes setting things up that you might know the direction it's going because you've read other manga, and then pulling the rug out from under you. I love stuff like that. He's also very good at building up super long-running gags. Yes, there are a lot of, funny phrases or scenarios that pop up multiple times throughout the series, but they are always building to something bigger, building up to a bigger payoff, a bigger punchline. And it all works to create such an entertaining ride. Now, I know comedy is one of the most subjective aspects of media. There are going to be people who don't find this funny at all. And, while they may be fools, that's all you can really do there. But for me personally, this was my shit, okay? Every fucking joke in this series, almost every single comedic chapter in this series was a fucking riot. I was laughing my ass off from the first page right up until I was crying at the last page that told a joke. I was laughing up until there. You see, Kaguya is much more than just a simple rom-com. It is a rom-com, and it does that element extremely well, but what it also does, arguably even better, is how it handles its drama. A lot of rom-coms fall into stagnation. When you have this super popular rom-com series and it's a will they, won't they type thing, and it just goes on for countless volumes, 10, 15, 20, 25, a common problem is just development stops. And they just keep throwing in funny scenarios, but the main core of the series just lies in limbo for a while. Kaguya does not have this problem. It is not only constantly developing the main romance, but the school year is moving along. Their lives are moving along. Things are constantly happening, throwing wrenches in the plans. While there are similar scenarios and similar jokes and carry out through the whole series, along with the seasons, the characters are changing. They are becoming different people. They are learning from their past mistakes and growing. Akazaka often uses comedy to show this progression, but he weaves it together so expertly with this really, really touching story about romance and friendship. As you could guess, these characters are not always right in the head. They deal with extreme pressure all of the time. Not just from their romantic lives, but just, the position they have in society and to maintain it. And this causes a lot of mental anguish in its characters. And while, of course, a lot of times this is played as a joke, it is never done so in a way that feels disrespectful to the actual plight the characters are going through. Being in an adult magazine, this series has full reign to go in a lot more mature themes, exploring mental health, depression, fear of the unknown, fear of rejection, and all sorts of different aspects in romantic relationships and friendships. And it's all just handled in such a fantastic way that in the few parts of the series where they tone back the comedy just to focus on, the character drama, I think it's excellent stuff. I just think Akazaka did a fantastic job presenting all of these themes in a mature, realistic, and relatable way. I think he really, really nailed what it is like to be, for lack of a better term, a Zoomer in high school. I was a Zoomer in high school once, I guess at the same time that this series started. And while most of these kids are, from a place of privilege and they're very rich, the way they interact with each other and technology and, social media, the way they talk, the places they hang out, it all feels super genuine. A lot of times when you have older people writing teenagers for like a current generation, there can be a bit of a disconnect. I think Akasaka really nails that here. Now, there are, of course, times where the story does become super over the top and crazy to the point where, the realism sort of goes out the window. But by this point, you're so invested in the story because of the excellent character drama that you're pretty much all in for the ride. And the series does have quite a few climactic moments, both either involving, the romantic plot line or just, the more general crazy plot lines happening in the world type scenarios. And it all results in a finale, which I thought was wholly satisfying. It ends in such a way where so many of these plot lines have a nice, satisfying, neat and tidy bow, but also it left enough open-ended. Not in a way I think you'd feel cheated or dissatisfied, but in a way where you can kind of be like, all right, I see what you're doing. Maybe leaving some room for a continuation in the future, maybe not. But I thought it was a nice way for people to speculate, but also feel like everything was gonna be alright. My only real complaint is that I wish it had gone on for longer, because I absolutely could not get enough of these characters, which is what we're going to be spending a lot of time talking about. So the only reason pretty much everything I've talked about works so well is because of how extremely well defined this cast of characters is. And the series series does have quite a large cast, however, it does the smart thing and it slowly eases you into all of them. Of course, first just focusing on our main duo, Kaguya and Shirogane, who come from two very different backgrounds, but in a lot of ways are very alike in their intellect, the way they plan out scenarios, with how determined they are. You can really tell why these two are drawn to each other. And their love story is the central pillar of this manga, and it's absolutely fantastic. One of the funniest parts about this series, I think, was how they perceive each other in their mind, how they play out these scenarios in their head and just wonder how the other will react. And it's usually completely different from what the character is actually thinking, but it was a great way to sort of just emphasize the conflict that they are feeling. Now, Kaguya in particular, I think, has some fantastic development, as she starts the series as a pretty cold person. She grew up without really a present father and mother. She was just sort of, passingly raised by her rich brothers, just carted around. She was taught to, close her heart off to the world. But once she starts to fall for Shirogane and starts to become friends with all the other student council members, she really opens up, she mellows out, she becomes a much more caring person, but she still has this part of her that is cold and calculated and logical. And so seeing how she deals with all these different sides of her personality made for one of the best parts of the series. But the series is much more than just our main couple. Pretty much every supporting cast plays a major role, not only in just, emphasizing the comedy and just making things more entertaining, but furthering the development of our main characters as well as their own. Chika Fujiwara, everyone. What a goofy girl. Chika is absolutely insane. She is the student council secretary and most of the time a complete airhead. She's extremely excited and jovial all the time. A member of the board game club, she is constantly bringing games for the student council to play. She absolutely loves Kaguya in a questionably maybe platonic way, and it is very hard not to be taken in by her overwhelming presence. She is often used expertly to diffuse tension of serious situations, but there are times where she does get serious and we see glimpses of another side to her that we don't often see. Ishigami is the emo of the group, the treasurer, and he has a pretty dark past. Let me tell you, for high school rom-com standards. And it has led him at the start of the series to be quite a bit of a bummer. Barely showing up to student council, always playing his video games and not really doing much else. But again, like Kaguya, once he forms more relationships with our characters, he starts to open up a little. We start to learn a bit more about what happened to him, and his whole plotline makes up definitely one of the most compelling parts of the story. Miko Ino, another character who is all too familiar with Ishigami's past, is yet another great addition to the cast. A member of the disciplinary committee, she is extremely strict, does not tolerate any bullshit, any tomfoolery. But you start to realize that there might be a reason why she is so guarded, why she is so strict. And once the barriers start to peel back a little bit, we are left with another fantastic character. Another one of my favorites is Ai Hayazaka. She is Kaguya's live-in maid. I've mentioned Kaguya's rich. I really mean it. She lives in a huge old mansion with a gigantic service staff. And Hayazaka, from a very young age, has been Kaguya's handmaiden. The two of them grew up together. They became friends. They go to school together. But they have a very different relationship than Kaguya has with all of the other characters. Like, Hayazaka has a very, very different life from anyone else. And while at first it's, she's like a super cool, badass maid who can just seemingly do anything, once we learn more about her, we realize that her life isn't really all that perfect, and there are a lot of things that she regrets. She regrets not being able to live a normal life. And this results in her getting some incredible development later on in the series. Those, I'd say, are our main core cast, but again, there are still a ton of supportive minor roles that really add so much to the series. There's a whole love triangle between students Kashiwagi, Tsubasa, and Maki Shijo. Maki being the daughter of one of the Shinomiya group's biggest rivals, and that sort of translates to her being one of Kaguya's rivals in school. But I think that plotline is so expertly woven into the series because it doesn't doesn't even like rear its head until you're pretty far into it. But knowing what was coming and, you know, rereading the early parts of the series, like I could see the seeds being planted from shockingly early on, and I thought that was really well done. Other characters I think add a lot to the story are Shirogane's family, his younger sister Kei, and their father, Papa Shirogane. This guy is my favorite character in the series. He's not in it for much, but man, holy shit, talk about a riot. This guy, I don't think there was a single scene this guy was in that wasn't just absolutely amazing. In some ways, he's a terrible father. In other ways, he is a great father. But he is just a wonderful presence, and he needs his own spin-off. There's so many other characters, man. There's I haven't even mentioned Tsubame. There's Gomanosuke. There's Shindo. And all of these characters are so fully realized. Like, there are so many amazing dynamics between all of these characters that I've mentioned. So many unlikely pairings that when put together make magic. Whether it be Kaguya and Ishigami's dynamic, where Ishigami is at first absolutely terrified of Kaguya and thinks that she's going to murder him, where Kaguya sees him more as an underclassman that she wants to help. Fujiwara and Ino's relationship, and where Ino absolutely idolizes Fujiwara for some reason, and Fujiwara uses it to often take advantage of her. Honestly, Ino synergizes with the cast extremely well. Like, there's even a plotline with her and Shirogane's father, which is absolutely, it's incredible, and it's as goofy as it sounds. Fujiwara is kind of the same. She has a more of a mother-son, teacher-student relationship with Shirogane that becomes quite over the top and hilarious. And she herself sort of has a will they, won't they relationship with Hayazaka. Maybe. Questionably. And as the series goes on, it just mix and matches these characters more. There's so many just iconic trios and duos, and this cast is truly one for the history books. I think they are just exceptionally well done. Not only are they always funny and entertaining, but there are layers to them. We get deep dives into their personalities, into their mental states, and I am going to deeply miss them now that it's all over. As for the art in Kaguya-sama Love is War, I absolutely love it. The character designs are simple enough, but they are very pleasant, they are very striking, they are very iconic, and I think what Akazaka nails above all else is his comedic timing, which is something that is kind of hard to pull off in a manga. It's easier in like a movie or show when you're like in control of how much time passes, you can pace things out, make cuts and edits and all that stuff. In a manga, you're sort of limited to the paneling to portray this effect, and I think he is pretty much an expert at it. I've talked before at how good he is at, you know, setting up and delivering on a joke, delivering very funny writing, but I think he also deserves a lot of credit for, you know, just implementing these jokes through the art, where, you know, things are spaced out well. Oftentimes the punchline will come after you turn a page, so it's a big surprise. His facial expressions are absolutely hilarious. A lot of, you know, the screen tones and effects he uses to blend with, you know, how the characters are feeling. A lot of things are, of course, exaggerated, and there's a lot of, you know, personified elements, and it all works extremely well to the benefit of this series. Again, it's not the most detailed art you'll ever see, but I think it does the job exceptionally well. Now, it does start off quite a bit rough, as a lot of manga do. Going from, you know, the later chapters or the anime to the very start of this manga can be extremely jarring, because the character, he really had not found his groove yet, I think, with these character designs. They look kinda ugly. Like, Fujiwara's hair always looks super unkempt. Kaguya's forehead is gigantic. Thankfully, though, he very quickly finds his groove, and by, like, maybe volume 4 or 5, the series sort of finds its consistent style, which is very appealing, and it stays there. So, yeah, really pleasant to look at. Quite a big fan of Akasaka's art. He has actually said now that he's retiring doing art, which, you know, I think it's unfortunate, but he'll still be writing stuff, so, it is what it is. I hope he still draws a few things in the future. So those are my thoughts on Kaguya-sama Love is War. If this is the first video you've seen of mine, and you don't really know me, after all of this, it probably won't surprise you to learn that this is my favorite manga series of all time. And I don't say that lightly, because I've read at this point well over 100 manga series. But everything about it just clicked with me. I love the story, the characters, the art, the comedy. absolutely phenomenal. And while I do admit it probably won't be everyone's cup of tea, I mean, this series is really popular and quite acclaimed. A lot of people love it. I would definitely recommend it. I'm going to be giving this series my first 11 out of 10, and I know that doesn't really make mathematical sense, but they say all is fair in love. And I truly do love this series. If you would like to read it for yourself, which you should, Viz has been releasing the series for a while in English now. 23 is the newest one, 24 is about to come out, 28 will be the final one. And also, as the volumes come out, they do put the chapters on the Shonen Jump subscription. If you have that, you can go onto their website and read all the volumes there. There is also a phenomenal anime adaptation. So far it's 3 seasons, it's covered about half of the manga. It does unfortunately skip over some of the more, inconsequential comedy chapters from the manga, but in return, we just get stellar production values and voice acting. The comedic timing there is off the charts. I'd honestly recommend starting the series with the anime because it's just so damn good. And it is continuing with a movie that's coming out in December. It's getting an English release in February. I'm gonna be there day one. And I hope it continues far after that because there's still a lot of content left, a lot of great stuff. Yeah, wonderful. There are also 2 spin-offs. There's We Want to Talk About Kaguya, which follows 2 minor characters from the media club as they essentially stalk Kaguya because she's very popular and they're obsessed with her. So you can check that out if you're interested. There's also the official doujin, where this series is pretty void of a lot of, ecchi fan service stuff. That's what this is, and it's something. I actually did a review on this a while back, so you can check that out if you'd like. For alternate recommendations, of course, Akazaka, while finishing up Kaguya for the past couple years, he has had another manga going in Weekly Young Jump, Oshi no Ko. And while it is quite different from Kaguya in terms of its story, it does have a lot of similar elements, and I think fans of Kaguya will really enjoy this one. I like some other rom-coms, but it is kind of hard to recommend them just after talking about Kaguya, because Kaguya is such a peak. So instead, we're going to recommend my peak for action manga, which is Blade of the Immortal. Yes, there have never been 2 series quite as different, but they are both equal in my eyes as the pinnacle of what manga has to offer. And with that, thank you all so much for watching my final full series review. I have 1 video left, and we're going to be discussing all my future plans, any concerns you may have. We're all going to address it. I was trying to get it out for November. Now it's looking like start of December, but it'll be there. Take it easy, everyone. I'll see you then.